When I was a single guy, engaged at the time, I believe, my buddy Bruce was keen to have me join him for a road trip holiday. We were both members of the same church, and Bruce was a likeable type of guy. And so Bruce managed to twist my arm to go with him for a week or so off down south on our road trip. But the thing was, Bruce loved rally car racing. Truth is, Bruce saw himself, I do think, as some sort of secret champion car driver. His souped up Datsun 1600 with its wider than standard tyres, his sports steering wheel all fitted the image. Now you need to know that I am not one of those adrenaline junkie guys. So when he deliberately left the road to head for the dirt or gravel road, I was a little nervous. The scene that is embedded into my memory from all those years ago is one of travelling extremely fast on a gravel road that wound around the side of a mountain, and that road had no guard on the edge. What stood between that fish-tailing sideways Datsun 1600 and a massive drop down the mountain slope was Bruce's skill, and hence my nervous state. Would we stay on track? Or crash and burn over the edge? Whatever roadsides we came across giving us warnings of what was ahead seemed to make little difference to Bruce. My words of counsel didn't seem to get through either, like, I'm supposed to get married next March, you know, Bruce. Bruce, those corner signs have a suggested speed limit on for a reason, you know. Oh, no. He says, you can go 15, 20 k's faster than that. You watch. With foot to the floor and dust flying behind us, all I could do was hold on for my life and pray for mercy. Well, I'm here today. Obviously, I survived the trip. I don't think I ever got back inside that Datsun again. In this session, to think about how we can stay on track and not crash and burn in our friendships. You see, the book of Proverbs, our manual for friendship, in this book, God gives us many warnings that relate to friendship. Warnings that we could say are like road signs along the road of life that we might avoid potential dangers that relate to our friendships. And so in this session, we're calling what is at the top of the page in the booklet that may be in front of you, Friendship, God's Warnings. And each of the major areas that we will consider, if you look at the headings, you recognise they are actually the words that you may see on a road sign beside a road. Contrary to what a lot of young guys think when they're behind a wheel, road signs are there not to spoil our fun, but they are to inform us. And many of those road signs have been placed there to alert us that there is potential danger ahead. And it would be wise of us, I'm including myself, to take heed to those warnings. And effectively that's what we find God doing in a number in Proverbs as it relates to our friendships. If we are to experience friendship God's way, we need to heed the warnings that He gives us. Okay, let's think of the first one, the first road sign, number one. What does it say? Proceed. Let's turn back in our Bibles to the manual for friendship in the book of Proverbs, to Proverbs chapter 12, and look with me at what verse 26 says. Proverbs 12, verse 26. It says, the righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray. The righteous should choose his friends carefully. Now, I'm very much aware, some of you maybe are puzzled right now as you look at your Bible, there is some difference in translations of taking that from the Hebrew and putting it into English. When we turn Testament, we find another passage which uses the same Hebrew word that we find in this verse, and I think it helps us to understand what is being communicated here. In Numbers chapter 13, you haven't got to necessarily turn there, but that's where you find the story. In Numbers 13 and following, from when Moses sent men from Israel into the promised land to be as spies. You remember that story? They're in the wilderness and they're wanting to go in, and so he sends out these men in a reconnaissance mission, we might call it today, to go in undercover, spy it out, come back with the report. Now the Hebrew word that's used in that story, spy out the land, is the same Hebrew word that we find in Proverbs 12:26, translated here in the New King James, choose. It's the idea of circling around. It's the idea to make a thorough investigation, to look carefully, to make reconnaissance. And so here in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 26, the wise father is giving counsel to his son. Careful research is needed before entering into a friendship, especially a close friendship. He is saying here, you need to proceed with caution. The righteous should choose his friends carefully. Now, why should they? Because we might react and say, oh look, you've been a bit over the top. You've been a little bit ultra-conservative, too cautious, Dad. And the son might have that sort of say back to the wise father giving this counsel. Well, what's he saying in the second part of the verse? Why should you choose your friends carefully? For, here's the reason. The way of the wicked leads them astray. If you don't proceed with caution in friend selection, you may end in danger. You may end being led astray by the wicked. Here's the road sign that we need to heed lest we crash and burn with our friendship. The righteous should choose their friends with care. Just as those spies. They were not to go into the land and say, it looks okay. Just sort of peek over the fence. They had to make a thorough investigation. They were to proceed with caution because potential danger lay ahead. They needed to do their homework and they needed to come back with their report to Moses before action was taken as to what they should do. And Solomon is saying, my son, be careful. Take a Sherlock Holmes investigation with the choice of your friends. So what's God saying to us then? Well, very simply, he's saying don't jump in too quickly with a close friendship. Go slow. Proceed with caution. He's not saying don't go there. He's just saying go slow. Take the time to assess first before that commitment. In the process, listen to counsel. You know, the closer and the deeper the friendships that we have, the more that is at stake. Friends can either be very positive in terms of their influence on us, or they can turn over to the next chapter, Proverbs 13, and look at verse 20. There's so much in Proverbs that relates to this. He who walks with the wise man will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. The friends you choose will inevitably be the person you become. Did you hear that? The friends you choose, that will inevitably be the person you become. There is no such thing as a neutral friend. Your friends will pull you closer to God, or they will pull you away from God. You want to be wise? Hang out with wise people. That's what Solomon's saying. You want to be godly? Hang around the godly. You want to be worldly? Hang out with the worldly. You want to be a fool? Well, have foolish mates, and you too will be a fool. So God is saying the people you spend the most time with are the people you yourself will become, and the consequence of choosing foolish ones, what's the consequence? Well, it's there in verse 20 of Proverbs 13. See what it says. The companions of will be disappointed. Far more serious than that, will be destroyed. Hear the counsel. God's counsel. Don't be like my old friend Bruce. Foot flat to the floor. ignoring the warnings, not heeding what I thought was good counsel. That's how you crash and burn in your friendship. Heed the first road sign. Proceed with caution. Secondly, the second road sign we think about, as we draw these threads together from Proverbs, is the road sign that says, wrong way, go. You seen that sign? I'm sure you have. Hopefully you've seen it in the right way and not the wrong way. It's the one that sometimes you see on an off-ramp, facing back the other way to catch those who got it wrong. What's the warning? In this direction, you are guaranteed to run into real problems. If we don't pursue our friendships God's way, we're going to hit head-on traffic. I think there are a number of things for us to think about that as we come to Proverbs. You see, we can go about our choice of friend the wrong way. That is, we can be making friends with people for the wrong reasons. Look at chapter 14 now and see what he says in verse 20. He says, the poor man is hated even by his own neighbour. The poor man is hated even by his own neighbour, but the rich has many friends. Chapter 19, we have something similar said in verse 4. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his friend. Verse 6, many entreat the favour of the nobility, and every man is a friend to one who gives gifts. I think something that the prodigal son discovered, don't you think? When he was cashed up, he had lots of friends. As soon as he'd blown all his dough, his so-called friends had gone too. Proverbs 14:20, the rich many friends. Now what's the attraction to rich people? Well, people are thinking, we might be thinking, if I was a friend of his, if I was a friend of hers, think what I might get. Think what benefits spill over my way. The rich man has many friends. And that normally has zilch to do with character, but that he has what others don't. That's not true friendship. Because when you analyse that, the attraction are the gifts I can get. That's not about the other. That's about me. At its heart, you know what that is, don't you? That is horrible selfishness. Remember what selfishness is? It's the enemy of true friendship. So if we are heading downward with friendship with someone, we are clearly going the wrong way, and we need to hear the warning sign here in Proverbs. Wrong way. Go back. Now turn over to chapter 31 as we think of this from a slightly different perspective in terms of choosing friends for the wrong reason. Proverbs 31, we read from verse 1. The words of King Lemuel, the utterances which his mother taught him. Okay, so now he's quoting his mum. What, my son? What? And what son of my womb? And what son of my vows? And here's the counsel. Do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it's not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink. And on he goes. Here the king's mother, King Lemuel's mother, and her son not to make wrong choices. First area, she gives warning of danger, relates to alcohol. She's basically saying to him, son, don't touch it. Then the second area, the second major area in this chapter that she touches on is our theme of friendship. She seems to know her son's tendencies. And I think it's because she knows her own heart. And she touches on something here in the second part of the chapter that spans all times and all cultures. And it connects with us. She deals with something that is incredibly relevant for you. even this morning. You see, the danger is that so many choose their best friends, their most intimate friend, their life partner for self-seeking motives or for superficial attractions. She says, we go down to the second part, she's saying, look, my son, you need to find a wife, but you need an excellent character. Look at verse 10. Who can find a virtuous, an excellent wife? For her worth is far above rubies. He's saying, it's like who can find a faithful man? It's a rare thing. Who can find a woman with a great character? It's a rare thing. And we won't go through all he says, let's sweep the next part, but jump down to verse 30. Right at the end, he comes to this summary issue. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. King Lemuel's mum urges him not to make the choice of life's closest based primarily on looks. One assumes that's good looks. You see, she might look cute on your arm, but if your choice is primarily based on looks, then you're going to get a rude shock, she says, because beauty fades. Doesn't last that long. She could speak from experience as an older lady. God's manual of friendship, remember, it's like the signs. It's not there to spoil our fun, but it's to inform us what we need to know, lest we crash and burn when it comes to the closest of all our human friendships. So every Christian young man, every Christian young woman needs to ask some serious questions when it comes to the most important of human friendships that you will have on planet Earth. A husband or a wife. What's the attraction? Is it her character? Is it his virtue? What is it that attracts you? Is it grace in her life? Is it the purity he maintains, or is it primarily her smile? Is it his eyes? Is it her physical appearance? How she makes you feel? We can go about the choice of our closest friends for the wrong reasons, based primarily on superficial attraction. So what is God telling us? If that's the way we've been thinking, if that's the way we're heading, He's telling us we're heading the wrong way. And we need to turn around. Because really that's friendship God's way. No, it's not. It's friendship the world's way. And therefore, because it's not God's way, it's the wrong way, and we need to go back. We need to turn around, or the Bible would call that repentance. Turn around that thinking in our heads. We need to read and heed the warning sign. Wrong way. Go back. You know, if we stubbornly refuse to heed the sign God has placed before us, then like going on the out ramp, going up it, is inevitable that we are going to have a head-on collision. Such a choice of choosing a lifelong friend as your closest friend based on the wrong reasons could be something that actually does ruin your life. I've been a pastor long enough, I've counselled enough married couples to know this is not fairy tale or make-believe stuff that only happens to somebody else. There have been millions of young people before, thousands like you today, whose attraction to the opposite sex and pursuit of a close friendship has more to do with hormones than it does with a clean head and a right heart. I urge you to embrace friendship God's way, lest your life joins the wreckage out there on the highway of life. Now there's another way of friends that Proverbs mentions that is not the right way, and this is different again. And this one may surprise you. But it's choosing too many friends. Choosing too many friends. You know, that sounds a little strange, especially in light of Facebook style. Huh? I mean, how many you got? Dozen? Hundreds? The more you got, the better, isn't it? Turn with me to Proverbs 18. Proverbs 18:24. And here at this point, I'd be willing to dump the New King James Version, pick up the New American or the ESV. Some of you who have the ESV will be glad to hear that. But we'll read that in New King James and you'll see what I mean. Proverbs 18:24. It's always a problem going from one language to another. Okay. Last verse of Proverbs 18. A man who has friends must himself be friendly. That's a wonderful truth. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Well, the ESV, the English Standard Version, I think the New American may be something like this. Maybe Paul can help because I think in front of you. A man of many companions may come to ruin. Is it like that? Okay, man of many friends may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So God seems to be saying, I think that is a more accurate description of what is being declared in the Hebrew language. Too many friends can have a destructive influence on your life. Sure, have you ever thought of that? So, contrary to Friends Facebook style, too many friends can bring about ruin. You think that through? You can be a social... You can keep up with all your friends and yet have so little time for your first friend, Jesus. You can't even keep up your regular, personal, daily devotions because you're too busy texting or chatting online late into the night and you've just passed it by yet again. You're tired to do it in the morning. Or with, I've got to go here, I've got to go there in chase of your friendships. Your family's neglected. Your church family is overlooked. Can you see? It's very practical. If you have many friends, it will bring you to ruin. And now obviously, if you think about it again, too many friends doesn't really allow you to have a deep friendship, does it? With two or three. You just simply do not have the time. You do not have the emotional energy for that to work out. Now you notice the contrast in this proverb, which is like the one we've sort of underscored, used as the theme for the weekend in the end of that chapter there. There's a contrast there, I think. A man who has friends, or a man who has many friends, comes to ruin. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. It should not go unnoticed what I mentioned before, that Jesus had 12 disciples and he brought into his closer circles 3 men, and that out of those 3 men, Peter, James and John, he had even a closer friend who stuck closer than Jesus' brothers. At Jesus' death, he entrusted the care of his mother, Mary, who too, his closest friends, even though he had blood brothers. There is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Now we should, somewhere along the line, I hope it's obvious, as Christians, we should be friendly to everybody. Friendly to all. Gracious and kind and loving to all. But take care in who you choose as your closer friends and even how many you have. The third road sign, the third area that I want us to think about now is, what's that sign that says warning? And you sometimes see like the image of 2 cars that sort of, their back wheels are on the ground and their front wheels are sort of up and they're all squashed head on. You know the sign. Warning, crash zone ahead. Now when you see that sign out on the road, surely that tells you that that section of road has had a history of crashes. And that there are certain things that are peculiarly dangerous about that area. That strip, that intersection, that hill, that blind corner, whatever. That area, there's something peculiarly dangerous about it. With such a track record from the past, we would be foolish to ignore such a specific warning sign, wouldn't we? Well, Proverbs actually spells out for us those that we should not associate with on a deeper level as a close friend. And history has proved some people that we should keep a distance from and not become close friends, but always being caring, loving and kind and have a friendly heart toward them. If we ignore, though, this sign, we will end up victims in that area, in that crash zone. What are those areas? And look, this is just a study in itself. So I'm just very briefly going to be suggestive, so I want us to have more time for you to discuss later. 3 areas. Firstly, the self-indulgent. We could put it under that category, the self-indulgent. Turn over to Proverbs 28, verse 7. Whoever keeps the law is a discerning son. But a companion or a friend of gluttons shames his father. I guess we would probably associate gluttony, wouldn't we? Being a glutton to someone who overeats. That probably is the default definition we have in our mind. So you know the scene. You go to Sizzlers, you paid the price, and so you can get as many plates as you want. You just keep coming back, they cut for you. They keep taking them away. And so what's the temptation? You go back and you go back and you go back and you don't know when to stop. Over and over and over. And what are you doing? You're overeating. You're indulging yourself in all the tastes and all the flavours. It's a reckless pursuit of the pleasure of food. That's the definition of what a glutton is. But it's not limited to food. The term glutton is broader than that. It's broader than what you have done and what I've done at Sizzlers. Okay, that's a confession. Today I think the term gluttony could also refer to what has become a common term, binge drinking. It would talk about the drug addict. It would talk about the person addicted to pornography. The glutton is the self-indulgent. They are indulging their human passions, whatever they may be. And what verbs say happens. When that happens, that person brings shame on his father. And of course, in the context of a Hebrew culture, that is very significant. They dishonour the family name. They dishonour the family reputation. They bring shame on the tribe. They bring shame on the name of Jehovah. They bring shame on the father. And so there's a strong warning there, not to be associating with the self-indulgent. Now, in one of the first sections of Proverbs, it's like there's a big section at the front that's sort of dealing with largely the same theme in 5, 6 and 7. We have the emphasis of avoiding the crash zone with immoral women, or we could substitute that for immoral men as well. And in those chapters, Solomon very clearly describes that there are some people who are out there to lure you into their web. And in particular, as a loving father, he warns his son to avoid this crash zone where many have fallen. And that's a little I touched on before, where the hormones have kicked in and taken over. And those people, those young women, those older men, those older women, it's not just youth, they are indulging their carnal passions. Now what happens? Proverbs tells us when a young man is lured in to the sexual enticements of this woman. Go back to chapter 7 and see that this wise, caring, loving father is bringing counsel to his son about this area of self-indulgence. Proverbs 7, verse 21. He's describing her in other ways. You can read it another time. Verse 21, with her enticing speech, she causes him to yield. She's been flirting. She's appealing to him. She's trying to attract him. With her enticing, she has caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately, he went after her. And how does he describe that? An ox goes to the slaughter. He's had it. That's what he's saying. His life is ruined because of that self-indulgence. He's warning us here against flirting. He's warning us here about getting too close with those sexual standards that are too loose. The point is, you can't maintain sexual purity if you hang around those who simply say, well, look, everyone's doing it. Remember, you become like the people you hang around. Selfishness can be contagious. So Proverbs places this warning sign before us. Warning, crash zone ahead. Avoid close friendships with the self-indulgent. Second area, the hot-tempered. Proverbs 22. Proverbs 22. Verse 24. A very, very simple, clear direction. Proverbs 22:24. Make no friendship with an angry man. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go. Don't hang out. Don't just not have a close friendship. Don't hang out with the furious man. So watch out for the dangers, he's saying, that are associated with a hot-tempered person. If you do go that way, you will crash and burn. Who's the hot-tempered person? This is the one who flies off the handle. This is the one who's always going off in a huff because things haven't worked out like he or she wanted. Now, if that's the type of you are, you're not going to be a very good friend. And you need to ask God to help you to change. And He can help you to change so that you can be the right person. In chapter 29, he also speaking about the angry man. In Proverbs 20, verse 22, he says, an angry man stirs up strife, and a furious man abounds in transgression. So in other words, the hot-tempered create their own crash zone. That's why you don't hang with them, if I can use the analogy. That's why you don't go with the furious man. You'll be taken into a crash zone. I saw an example of this just this last week. Of all places, while I was having a nice friendly social game of tennis down here at Walloon. On an adjoining court, a man lost his cool. He, I think, has shown previously that he is a hot-tempered man from my little exposure to him. Whilst in the middle of a friendly game of doubles, this poor chap got hit quite hard with a tennis ball. Apparently it wasn't the first time it happened through the night. Well, that was it. He blew his fuse. In that, he turned around immediately in the midst of that game still going on, and he stormed off the court. He grabbed his bag. He threw his money down on the counter. He huffed off to his car, hopped in his car, and took off, wheels spinning, gravel going everywhere, out of the car park. And the three other men were left looking at each other on the court, wondering what just happened. Can I say I'm not looking forward to the potential that I could play with him or against him in the coming weeks? You know why? Hot-tempered people are a crash zone. The appeal in Proverbs 22, verse 24 and 25, is not to be a friend of an angry person, not to hang out with. Why? Well, I've sort of said it's dangerous sort of to be around them because you might get hit by something. But that's not actually what this says. Look at Proverbs again, 22, and see what he says as he moves forward. In 24, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul. You see, it's a crash zone. It is a dangerous place for you to be, because those that you are with are those that you become. With the hot-tempered, it's a crash zone. Third area we touch on, tying these things together from Proverbs, the loose-tongued. Proverbs chapter 16, please. Turn over there. Proverbs 16. Just hang with me. We're almost done. I know it's warm in here. Proverbs 16 and verse 27. The ungodly man digs up evil. Oh, that the politicians and the media knew that verse. The ungodly dig up evil, and it is on his lips like a burning fire. Perverse man sows strife. And now notice this. And a whisperer separates the best of friends. In chapter 17, in verse 9, he says, he who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats separates friends. And how sad this is. Gossip and loose tongue whispers does great damage. Many friendships, some of you perhaps have experienced this. Close friendships have been separated by what people have said behind their backs. This happens to Christians. It happens in Christian families. It happens in Christian churches. Criticisms are whispered, diminishes affections for those people. It affects their esteem, and their respect for them is lowered because of what they have heard being whispered in their ear. Once, there may have been a close friendship, but because people were whispering around, distant grows in that friendship. They grow apart, and eventually distance comes to division. A whisperer separates the best of friends. You know, this is one of Satan's most effective tactics when it comes to destroying friendships. So don't join his team by listening to loose tongues. Proverbs 6:19 describes the one who sows division between brethren. He describes them as an abomination to the Lord. We need wisdom to know how to handle when people start chewing on our ear on else. Graciously and politely, have nothing to do with it. Why? Because the loose-tongued person is a crash zone, and we should avoid close relationships with them. Turn over to chapter 20 and verse 19. He who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with one who flatters with his lips. Beware of the flatterer. Remember Proverbs 27:6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the enemy are deceitful. So there is a crash zone associated with the one who is buttering you up. They're after something. Watch out. There is most likely manipulation happening. They want to get something they want. It's a form of selfishness. So those three areas, I trust you can see there is this repeated theme that runs through those: self-indulgent, hot-tempered and loose-tongued. There's a theme that runs through there. They're all lacking something. They are all lacking self-control. All of them. All three of those about self. We're back to the great enemy of true friendship: selfishness. And so we need to heed this final road sign that we find in Proverbs in our friendship manual. There is an inevitable crash zone ahead if you are close friendship with the selfish. Be friendly to them, yes, but don't enter into a close friendship with them. Why not? Well, trust you've heard the lesson come through. We become like those we hang around with the most. So therefore, be wise in your selection. Classic verse in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 15:33. Evil company corrupts good morals or good habits. Friends influence the language you use. Friends influence standards, the places you go, the activities you do. Many young people have learned from their own bitter experience, choosing bad friends brings tragedy. I have a friend who pastors a church in Michigan, America. And in his youth, it is a tragic example of this very thing. When he was a teenager, his father gave him some wise counsel. His name's Gordon. And his father said to him, "Gord, don't you ever get into a fast car." Well, rebellious. He didn't heed the wise counsel of his dad. Gord got into bad company. He chose bad friends. One of those friends loved to drink and loved to drive fast. And one day, while travelling with his friend, they had a crash. Gord was thrown from the car and he was left hanging in a tree without his arm. Today, he is a one-armed preacher. He has a false arm and a false hand. It's his right. By what I can remember, shaking his hand, you have to shake his left hand. Proverbs 13:20 is right on the button. The companions of fools will be destroyed. By choosing the wrong close friends, you can lose so much. Your testimony as a Christian, you could lose your job. You could lose your reputation. You could lose your virginity. You could lose your arm. Worse, your life. Worse, your soul. Eternal destruction. So heed the warnings of Scripture. God, out of love, has given them to us. Listen to the wise counsel. Follow the road signs in Proverbs. Now, by all means, enjoy the journey of life. I'm not trying to throw a wet blanket on friendship. But I'll be helped from the Scriptures to be wise in your friendship. Embrace the blessings that come through wholesome friendships. See the colour grow of the beauty of friendship in your life. Yes, all those things we've already said. But remember that road signs, they are not there to spoil your fun. They're there to alert you so that you do not crash and burn in your friendship. Proverbs 13 verse 1, we finish here. Proverbs 13 verse 1. What's it say? A wise son heeds father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. It's a wise son who listens to a father's instruction. Well, may we all heed our heavenly Father's instruction as we find it revealed to us in Proverbs relates to friendship. And don't be a fool and reject the wonderful things that our Father in heaven tells us in the manual of friendship. I want to ask that you would bow with me. Together we may pray.